We all know that push-pull between wanting to please the person that we're with, whether it's our partner or our best friend, wanting to make sure that their needs are met and that we're having a fun time, we're laughing, things feel easeful, and there's a flow. And that's something that we all want. And then we also know the flip side of that, which is I have a need and I feel really strongly about this. And I definitely don't want to go eat at that restaurant, or I definitely disagree with what you're saying. And this is where we run into that balancing act between the archetype of Libra, where we are relational and we're pleasing and everything feels good and we're flirting and it's all ease and flow, and Aries, where we have wants and needs and desires, damn it, and we want them met. So today we are going to dive into Aries and Libra. I'm Nafa Perkins of Electra Astrology, and this is my series, Astrology for Awakening. I'm going through all 12 of the sun signs in great detail. There are 4 or 5 episodes on every single sun sign in this series. It's about to be complete. I am almost all the way to the end, and so that feels exciting for me. My whole point of creating this was to put a series of teachings out into the world that really use astrology in a different way than what we're accustomed to. This is astrology with the psychological, spiritual bent to it. All of these archetypes are within us. They're part of our psyche. They're how we as humans are very predictably acting out our lives. And understanding them helps understand more about ourselves. So there's no difference here than like understanding yourself psychologically, except that we're organizing it in a really perfect way. There's so much information that you can continue to get once you orient yourself around the fact that, oh, this is my inner Aries, or I'm really working on some Libra stuff right now. And we all have all of these signs in our charts. So you don't have to listen to just your sun sign. And in fact, I would suggest that you just put any of these episodes on at any time, and they'll help you to see something about your life that you probably hadn't seen before. So if you're on YouTube, make sure that you are liking and subscribing so that you can find these videos again. And if you're listening on the podcasts or narratives, make sure you're following the show. And one more thing, if you want to work with me privately, I do astrology readings. I also mentor. I've got a lot of different cool offerings. You can find me at electraastrology.com. And let's jump into Libra and Aries.
Aries and Libra, they are separate. However, they are enmeshed with one another. You really can't have one without the other. And it's like this for every single zodiac sign. Libra, as we've been talking about over the last few weeks, is about partnership. Libra's a cardinal sign, and so is Aries. And these are real powerhouse signs. The boss energy that comes from both Libra and Aries is pretty intense. Now, with Libra, it's a little bit more subtle. Like we've been talking about, Libra rules through being nice and being easy and being pleasant. And that is where that saying, you can catch more flies with honey than with vinegar, comes from. And it's true. A lot of times we can get what we want, we get our needs met by being really pleasing. And that is when we are tapping into our Libra energy. And Libra is the diplomat, Libra is the listener, Libra is the one that moves in to create balance, that brings a sense of integrity to the relationship. But like we talked about in the shadow episode, when you defy Libra, when you betray Libra, or when you aren't quite delivering, or you have somehow instigated the Libran envy, that's when that Aries energy comes into play. Now, Aries is one of the strongest signs in the zodiac. It is a fire sign. Fire signs are incredibly strong because you can't mess with fire. We all know that fire will burn when you touch it. We know that we need fire in order to live, and that we are very much at the mercy of fire. We know that fire can easily get out of control, that fire can be really explosive, and all of that is true about Aries. So if we just take a minute and look at Aries, Aries is where we are learning to perceive ourselves. It's also where we are noticing that others see us in a certain way. And it is where the rising sign is. It's the eastern horizon, and it is the rising sign or the ascendant in everybody's chart. This also rules the solar new year, There's a lot of power and force that comes along with Aries. Aries is the warrior, it is the decision maker, and it is the action taker. And we all have Aries in our chart. In fact, you can look at where Aries lands, what house Aries rules in your chart, and that is where you are very likely going to be the most assertive, the bossiest, and the most willing to stand up for yourself. So we love Aries energy because it really helps us to get what we want. And it doesn't have to be so nice and so easy. And Aries really, surprisingly, considering that it rules this area of our charts where we're so concerned with how we are perceived by others, Aries has a quality of like not really caring. Aries can be that energy that's not afraid to ask for anything that it wants. For example, we were out to breakfast this morning and we were sitting at a table that was right next to a larger table, and there was a party of 8 that came in, and clearly they needed our table to be able to push up against the other table so that all 8 people could fit. The service staff had given them a little table off to the side, and there was one woman who was total Aries energy. I overheard her saying we should ask those people if they'd be willing to move. And all of her friends, very Libra in nature, were like, oh God, no, we can't. That's so rude. And the Aries woman, she turns and she says, hi, would you guys mind moving? And of course, it was fine. It was no big deal for us. We moved. They had their 8 top. And it's such a good example of how we each can tap into our Aries energy to get what we want. There's a fearlessness with Aries. Now, there's a fearlessness with all of the cardinal signs. Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, because these are the leadership signs. These are the ones that look around the room, calculate who's in charge, what do I need, how do I need to show up in order to get my needs met. Aries asks for what it needs or it demands it. Cancer, like we talked about in Cancer season, intuits what does somebody need from me in order for them to give me what I want. Libra says, how easy and pretty and flirtatious do I have to be to get what I want? And then Capricorn says, I'm a boss. You're going to respect me. I'm just going to tell you what I want and you're going to follow suit. Okay. So when we're talking about Aries energy, it's the part of you that doesn't really care whether you have to inconvenience somebody else to get what you want. It's the part of you that is very fearless and independent and says, look, I'm going to move into action. I am willing to go to battle for what I want. And sometimes the battle is going to be really obvious. Aries people are often the people that are loud, proud, honking the horn, even rude. But Aries people are also the ones that ask for what they need. So we might have a love-hate relationship with Aries energy in general. Sometimes it is too abrasive, it is too dominating, and it is intimidating. But we also know that it is the Aries energy that gets the needs met. And so you may have a love-hate relationship with your own Aries energy, depending on what it was like for you as a child, because there are many facets of different kinds of cultures where strength is praised and appreciated and encouraged, perhaps for the masculine, but being strong and loud and demanding, it's not considered polite or appropriate. And sometimes that can be pushed more on the feminine. So you might, depending on how your parents reacted to strength, to a demand for your needs getting met, you might have an interesting relationship with your own Aries power. But the thing is that we all have Aries somewhere. We have been looking around and trying to really get a grasp on our own power. And if you were trained out of your power, you were somehow taught that being powerful was dangerous, you were going to get in trouble if you had needs, or it was rude or not acceptable, then you're having to do double time of that work, really getting like, hey, I'm allowed to ask for what I want. I'm allowed to advocate for myself. I'm allowed to be really powerful, even if it makes somebody else uncomfortable. Because Aries is the warrior energy and Libra is the relational energy, you can see how these two archetypes might have conflict with one another. How can I be in relationship with you if I have to stand really strongly in my power and it's going to upset you? And why would I risk upsetting you if my concern is being easy and not rocking the boat? So we really are faced with this conundrum when we're working with this axis around how to assert the power. Which well am I drawing from? Am I drawing from my nice, easy, let me pet the fur the right way well? Or am I drawing from my standing, strong, unwilling to compromise well? Take a deep breath as you're listening to this and just notice how these words are landing in your nervous system. And if you can, get a sense, which of these wells are you most likely to draw from? And what did you learn about personal power and the effects of personal power? A lot of us learned that saying no, standing up for ourselves was not okay. And if you're somebody that learned that it wasn't okay to be angry, wasn't okay to have boundaries and stand up for yourself, how are you working with those teachings now? How are you seeking to understand your own personal power differently? And are you learning how to advocate for yourself in better ways? Now, another thing about Aries energy is that because it rules anger, now Scorpio rules that kind of seething anger that we hold on to, where we hold grudges. And I'll be talking about Scorpio soon as the sun moves into Scorpio. But Aries represents that quick, fast, explosive anger. So we all know that people that are angry, that are explosive, are intimidating, and we don't really like that. We don't really want to be around those kinds of people. And so taking that knowledge into account and knowing that you're doing work around self-awareness, that as we're working with this Aries energy, it is totally possible that there are going to be things that pop up that make you instantly angry. Aries is the instant anger. It's the explosive anger. It's the you're not going to mess with me kind of anger. But we're trying to learn how to really master our anger and use it as right force, as true power and strength instead of false power. Because the thing about a very explosive person or a person that loses their temper or a person that yells is that people don't respect you. They might cower in front of you, but after the fact, they are going to hold a grudge. And we don't really want that. That's not really effective use of power. What we want is for people to respect us. And so we then have to learn how to work with this Aries in a way that gets our point across, that makes it very clear, but that doesn't insult other people and that doesn't disempower them, because we are still working with the other side of this archetype, which is Libra. And so we can't just explode and walk away. We can't just attack somebody, get our way, and keep moving on. We're always beholden to this Libra energy of, okay, I have to be powerful, but I also have to make sure that I'm leaving the other person with some sort of sense of equilibrium. If you are somebody that tends to be very explosive, think about that. How do you go back and remedy? Sometimes that can look like simply apologizing, can look like asking for a secondary conversation once tempers are calmed down. It can also look like taking a moment before you move into action to think about, what does this situation call for? How can I assert myself while still making sure that the other people that I'm dealing with feel taken care of and feel attuned to? Because we're still dealing with this concept of integrity and of getting our needs met, but not through being so dominating that we're that soldier that's just killing everybody. And that can be really hard because Aries is the god of war. So ideally, what we're looking at is playing around with our own internal relationship to Aries energy and questioning, how can I be a warrior that still has integrity? How can I be a warrior that still values the other person while getting my needs met? This is some work for you, some homework if you choose to accept it. So these themes are going to be front and center for you. So if you have any episodes this week where you get triggered and you feel that anger rise, see whether you can work with it through conscious, taking a deep breath, stopping a moment, trying to understand why you're having the reaction, what need it is that you're trying to meet of your own, and is there a way to meet that need while incorporating diplomacy as well.
All right. Thanks for joining me, you guys. I hope that you learned something, and I will see you all soon.